Just got to the end of day 30 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry, Tranche 2, Phase 2. We've been listening to the live evidence of AFJ. He was joining us remotely with a voice modulator, and the entirety of the hearing room was sealed off apart from the public gallery. There was only two of us in the public gallery, myself, and a little way into the day, Sarah joined us. Sarah, what did you make of today's hearing?
Well, I'll just sort of give a bit of a background so that you know. Right, so I'm from Essex, and I've been involved in a lot of anti-fascist demonstrations, and I've never been anti-war demonstrations. And during the 90s, where this is this is being talked about.
So just give a quick, quickly,
sure.
To say that so AFJ was somebody who was active in hunt sabbing from 1989 onwards. He also got involved in anti-fascist activity in the early 90s. We heard about things at Welling. We heard about the Battle of Waterloo. But a lot of his evidence really related to the 19th of November 1994 and the mass sab of the Essex hunt, which was right at the beginning of the new CJA legislation. AFJ said that he was, though he'd been very committed as a countercultural teenage anarchist in a lot of the stuff early on, that he kind of came out of retirement to get involved in the the November 94 hunt sab. He was arrested at that sab for obstructed, aggravated trespass and obstruction of a police officer. Now, he wants the inquiry to assess that. He believes that conviction was unsafe because of the presence of Andy Coles on the on the SAB on the day that Andy Coles was part of the Brixton Hunt SABs, which he'd been involved with, and there was a lot of questions around that as well. So, Sarah, do you want to just say what you thought of it all?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was interested in what I was interested when I first walked in. It was the reports were coming up from Trevor Morris, and I'd seen all his evidence
about Welling, wasn't it?
And about Welling, yeah, and Andrew Coles. I mean, and I didn't think the interviewer did enough. Sort of looked into the infiltration aspect of it enough. I mean, I think it was all focused on was it justified, without looking into. I mean, what questions. So what I've written is questions clearly trying to justify the infiltration, trying to justify it. But I mean, they're not mentioning the personal, the way that he, particularly Andrew Coles, at the moment is what we're talking about at the moment. I mean, there's Trevor Morris as well. Sort of not making close personal friendships. Presumably, he was making out that he was making friends with these people, and they didn't seem to. And none of the people apart from the one who he, violated sexually, that. None of the other people seem to even remember him, apart from as an irritating person who used to come round and nose his way into their business. So there wasn't. I think there should be more about that and less about constantly sort of trying to pressure people to say that in fact, they were violent, or when they repeatedly said they weren't. And I mean, you can't. It's very, you and a bunch of horses and a bunch of dogs, who's going to be the winner in that situation? Now, plus the fact that, what about the police? I mean, how were a few people running across a field violent, sort of disrupting the hunt when the police, there were lines of police there, wouldn't them sort of whacking people over the head with truncheons and shouting at them and arresting them, wouldn't that have disrupted the hunt? So that's another thing. I mean, is there anything that the infiltration did which the police were turning up at the hunt anyway, that the police couldn't have reported? How is them ingratiating themselves into people's personal lives, adding anything to what the police can do anyway, because the police were turning up at the hunts anyway. And could see what the hunt sabs were doing. So how does the infiltration make it any?
I mean, I definitely, yeah. I mean, I think it's really clear that, I mean, so much of the questioning of the inquiry is around the justification of the deployment of undercover officers, and they go really hard sometimes about kind of trying to claim that particularly people involved in hunt sabbing were somehow violent. We've heard so much evidence from so many people to point out that it was the hunts and hunt supporters who were the violent ones, and that the police have been incredibly violent when it comes to policing of hunt sabs. But certainly this witness today had no person, I mean, apart from the fact that he had some interactions with Andy Coles whilst he was part of Brixton Hunt Sabs, he had very little sort of connection to him in any meaningful way. He talked of him as an acquaintance. They passed pleasantries a few times. He couldn't remember Coles' particular involvement. He was arrested at the same time as him, but doesn't remember any particular involvement that he had. It's notable that AFJ has moved on politically and in his life generally. He went into some other career. He's now got a senior position in some company which appears to be quite a significant company of some sort. He wants he believes his convictions are unsafe because of the presence of undercover police officers. It falls to Sir John Mitting to decide whether it was an unsafe conviction or not. I have no legal expertise whatsoever. I am somewhat unconvinced there's much of a case there. But I mean, it does say a lot about the inquiry that someone like that has been brought as a witness. There's that question around there. Are there more people who knew Andy Coles better when he was deployed undercover, who had more of an impact on the personal lives of people? I really don't know. John Mitting just walked past as I was saying that, and he bowed as I mentioned it was his decision, which was quite amusing, but obviously not caught on camera. There we go. Doesn't really make for good telly. I mean, I think I'm sure that there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that the arrest of AFJ, the way he was treated by the police, is totally unacceptable and an anathema to a free society. The police shouldn't be behaving like that. He shouldn't have been arrested like that. He shouldn't have been convicted like that. It's an absolute disgrace, an utter disgrace. Whether it was illegal in the eyes of the law is another matter. God knows, quite frankly. We wait and see. And certainly in terms of miscarriages of justice that are a result of the deployment of undercover police officers, it's probably not high on the list of the ones that I would be shouting and raving about to people. So we will wait and see. The hearing has finished for the day, which means it's finished for the week. It means we're not back now until Wednesday, when we will hear from Andy Coles himself, HN2, cover name Andy Davey, known to everybody as Andy Van, the man who deceived Jessica into a long-term intimate relationship, a man who still denies that, a man who went on to become a Peterborough Conservative councillor, is president of Peterborough Conservatives, was the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for that area, though he had to resign from that when it was unveiled that he would unmasked as being an undercover police officer, when his brother, the Reverend Richard Coles, mentioned it in his autobiography that his brother had been an undercover officer of some sort, and people worked out that it was who it was. That is going to be very interesting. Will he stick to his denials? He's got 3 days of questioning. He will be here in person. It will be live streamed. We understand that he'll be questioned by David Barr. We wait and see if he can stand 3 days of questioning where he continues to deny what everybody knows and what has been proven pretty much without a shadow of a doubt from the witnesses we've already seen this week, not least Jessica yesterday, who gave a very powerful testimony. Her evidence is available, audio only. She did. There's no video footage. She does have privacy, but you can go back and listen to that. It's on 2 YouTube videos. They've been shared around, easy enough to find. I really recommend anybody who's curious about the deployment of Andy Coles to listen to Jessica's evidence. I think she is the key witness, really, when it comes to his deployment. Sarah, is there anything else you want to add before we go?
Well, there were a couple of things. I don't know, just if the car insurance issue comes up, I think that's a bit of a red herring. I'm not really quite sure. I don't know if you got what you got on it, but in those days, because that was around the time I first started driving, when you got insurance, so your insurance always said you could drive any car, not as long as you're insured, you can drive any car. So if they're trying to make out that he probably didn't. I think because they are on his side, aren't they? The questioners are on Andrew Coles' side, and they're trying to make out that he wasn't driving. Because I think the witness is saying that if he hadn't been driven by the undercover person who was impersonating a hunt saboteur, then he wouldn't have. And they're saying, oh, did he drive because they're saying, oh, well, that they couldn't have brought a driver in at the last minute because they wouldn't have been insured to drive. Well, I don't think that is the case. I think it is more now, and you have to phone up your insurance company and get emergency insurance. But at one time, if you're insured to drive your own car, you can drive another vehicle as well. Third party fire and theft. Anyway, so there was that. The other thing is that a general thing that's been quite upsetting me all the way through the time I've been watching the inquiry is the callous way that they mention ex-activists who are deceased, because they always say, oh, look, we can't name this person, we can name this person because they're dead, right? And so obviously the witness knows in advance, but I mean somebody listening to that who was involved in that, that might be the first time they've ever found out that person died, and it's incredibly insensitive the way it's part of a general sort of attitude towards protesters that they're not the same as real as the establishment who are the real people, and they're not the same. They haven't got the same sort of feelings. It's not very nice. I think they should. I don't think they should automatically be able to name someone just because they're deceased if they're in the same category as the people that they're saying don't have to be named publicly on something that's going out to anybody who can listen to it.
I mean, just on the thing of naming people, I mean, there is one particular one which I think is really pertinent. Andy Coles gave a name when he was arrested. It wasn't a fake name. It was the name of a activist who was involved in 56A Info Shop. That person's name has been named by the inquiry at repeated times. It was named yesterday, named today. When I tweeted that his name was mentioned the other day, he got in contact with some other people and said that my tweet was the first time he knew that the inquiry was going to name him. Apparently the inquiry has done a risk assessment and they have decided that it is safe to name him because of his involvement in 56A. And I'd really challenge the idea that involvement in 56A means that he had a public profile of any sort. I don't think that equates to any sort of public profile. So you'll notice in my tweets when I mention this fact, I don't name the person in question. As we understand it, there was a warrant out for his arrest because Andy Coles failed to turn up to his court hearing, and the name that he'd given was a real person, and he gave the address of a squat, a well-known squat. So we don't know what the impact that had on the unnamed activist who was still around following the inquiry. Close enough to know that he got named by me. So I think this is once again a sign, as Sarah just said, of disrespect that the inquiry has for activists. It is really unpleasant the way that there seems to be a bit of it's good, we can name this one, which came across today with Clem Turf, who was sadly deceased, and many people might have not known that person is deceased. Certainly an effect. We talk a lot about the social history of the inquiry that it draws out, and also the sort of a lot of people kind of finding out things. There's a bit of a Comrades Reunited that goes on in the public gallery, and people finding out that people have died through the inquiry isn't that uncommon. So yeah, I really think it does need to be handled with a great deal of sensitivity, as you say. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No.
Well,
thank you for letting me speak.
Oh, thank you for joining me. I mean, literally, it was just the two of us in the public gallery. It was kind of a surreal experience today. But that's the end of the week. Over the weekend, I'm going to attempt to do the weekly updates that I normally do, and I've kind of failed to do for the last few weeks because it's just been so hectic. But thanks for joining. I'll see you all Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Bye for now.